So I work in a pool hall. I work at Gold Crown Billiards in Erie, Pennsylvania. We're one of the biggest pool halls along the Great Lakes. We have 3 major tournaments. A lot of pro players come in for our pro tournament. But we also have the last vestiges of that kind of pool culture where people come in and off the road and they hustle and they play for money. And so I mentioned someone in this poem. His name is Randy Glover, who's a great old hustler. So I'm going to read another poem about him too. This is also a poem I'm always talking about. I like to recycle things. And so I was trying to work on this poem called Elegy in My Other Windowed Room, which really I could never get it to come out. And so instead of working on it anymore, I just started to write about how I couldn't get the poem to work. And so I got this poem instead. And I'm always saying, like, if you can't get something to work, then write about it not getting to work, and it might lead you to someplace unexpected. Right? So this is how I got to that poem. Poem not titled Elegy in My Other Windowed Room. I once wrote a poem called Elegy in My Other Windowed Room, which was an utter failure. I couldn't find the language for what I was feeling long ago in a one-room apartment, high on Valium, and my neighbors upstairs arguing again, and the radio playing this strange song by Radiohead that sounds as if whales were singing, or a song that whales would write if they had hands to hold instruments, or the song my daughter's doll might hum if she had a voice. Though she has a narrator, at least, as my daughter whispers, "Baby, take nap," or "Baby sleeping," or "Baby won't sit," and drags her baby, one-armed limping like a wounded bird doll across the floor. She's learning something here, assigning these feelings to things, much as the writer in me does, when she pulls the baby doll's head right off its shoulders, and hairless it rolls across the hardwood floor, rolling like the 9-ball I saw my friend Randy send across the felt toward the corner pocket in a big money game. And the head like the 9-ball, and the 9-ball like the head just keeps rolling, but then somehow, as if an invisible hand touches a finger to it, it stops. The doll's head stops just before it hits the wall, the way that 9-ball stopped just short of falling in the far right corner. And Randy stood there, dumbfounded, silent, before he ran up to it and yelled, pointing, "You fuck, goddamn." And this is the point in the poem. It would be beautiful to say the ball fell in at the moment of his worst despair. That ball not emptying his pocket so much he didn't have gas to drive home. But it didn't drop, because that's how it goes. Things don't fall when they should and break apart when they shouldn't and don't come back together again. Like me and my son's mother a decade ago. How our words failed us, rearranged us. And I lived with him in that room without walls, and the shouting through the ceiling a hard rain to pummel me, like the words his mother and I hurled, and how without a car I carried him through the snow to that dreaded daycare, the kind of place where only poor people have to send their kids. And the fat white woman there, who I knew was not nice, who months later was fired for tying a 2-year-old's laces together and laughing as he tried to run. And how a part of me has died every time I had to leave my son there, and has been dying ever since. And perhaps you are wondering where this is all going to say perhaps something about the rain outside falling across the city streets and the empty tracks and the train trestle where boys still spray paint the names of their lost lovers and their dead. My daughter is now talking to her baby doll's decapitated head, cooing to it as if it will speak. This is for my friend John, who requested this. This is a kind of strange sound poem. It's called "Tell Me What Music You Are Most Afraid Now That You Are Here." And this is one of these poems, and I read a lot of these. I don't really know what it's about in terms of sense, but it's more about an emotion or a sense that the heart tries to speak, much more than the head. It is astounding. I feel its mouth this morning sweeping. how little the ordinary needs mending. A person notices the body shakes. You can't help noticing its hinges, like butterfly wings, how sometimes what they do is open the sky. And then it came and went, as if to dredge the days, a stream no one noticed until it was a dusty bed. I eat weightlessness and scars, a pity soup I stir and strain and separate the lumps I cannot ascertain. When she was so asleep on the grass, eyes dark as ink that rewrote the page of waking up beside her, her jawline caught the light as if the world was full of tiny wings, like moths that avoid traps. This life of insects, tiny beings that sing the air with astonishment and annoyance, even fear, as when a wasp alights and one must be still. The black and gold thorax gleams the sun. We want to run, but hold our body tight as fists. Such appetites insist to leave. The small things die around us every day. Against the story, we bend like reeds. Tell me, squinting, wind-washed, white girl wigs and cigarettes, Milltown bars and steel-toed boots of men who never held your hand. Are you in motel rooms and back streets, bone-mothered and birds pecking for bread crumbs as if to peck away each word unsaid? In the morning, there is the sweeping of the dead. How do you survive abandoned, without thread to sew the torn? By what chambered heart so heavy it hurts the skin, as if falling into a nest of wild bees, the body breathing to be born. It loves what opens. It loves what stings. Sonogram. You want to say, the bell to a trumpet, a hollow sound, the sound of emptiness becoming whole, whole as a loaf of bread, and the hungry sound that echoes, a sound thin as water, or deep, deep as the echo of the womb, where the one you thought you would raise was gone on a night of hard rain, when she knelt in the bathroom, the thumb-sized bloody loss. How many years ago you cannot count except with your thumbs, a thumb-sized sound, that small, that full of losing, how large it grows. And you are lost in the forest of what did not happen, searching for the way back to before, but the blackbirds have swallowed all of the crumbs. So you begin again, begin in the present tense, and the patter of the children in the fountain downtown. And there is Elmore from the Roosevelt Hotel in his wheelchair, the sound of his wheelchair creaking through the puddles and the moments after rain. And you were sitting there on a bench, not smoking, trying to catch the sound of the girls clapping hands and Elmore raising his arms in the spray of the city fountain and the sudden sunlight, somewhere like 6th Street and somewhere where after the voices stop and you look down to find the tracks of his wheelchair and the sound so long ago that took his legs, the sound you never heard of his not having legs, a phantom sound. Heard our whole lives, for we are all wheeling with our amputee limbs toward that sound of someone so near. You can hear them breathing when they are sleeping. When they are sleeping, it is not much to ask. It is not much to ask. Are you there? Your voice is a right cross. Your voice is a right cross, a faint, body swaying in an after-hours joint, the last song on the radio of summer, a voice of autumn mountains in the sea, the great Lake Erie, the moment a heron rises out of the tall grass, or how your hand becomes a tulip, your body a field of wheat, your mouth threshing slowly across your plain, or quietly smoking on a fire escape, unfolding our bodies like origami cranes, so after there are the lines of where we held. We carry those invisible seams throughout the day, and how in the house of done, the house of leaving, the house of left, something remains. Another kind of music, embroidered in the threaded air, in the sentiment of a lover's look, or the sound of freight trains coupling, or the long drive up to Detroit past the factories of men making machines. There is that sound, that voice of sort of hum in a bar in Cleveland where I sat with tired men watching a hockey game, cheap beer. I heard it curling under the stools in the surety of there is nothing much to say, or once in the face of a young woman working the counter at Macy's where I handed her my bill, a small glance she gave that said nothing more than life is hard and the rest of my day is a long shift, and thank you for being polite, and here is your change. It is this, it is this, it is this, it is this. Inside the concertina, the woman plays on the sidewalk. The coins I gave, the chords she gave. A system is a room of shadows in whose silence there is something, almost a sound, breezing through the rain-black trees, lilacs and cloves, simmering soup, mesquite grilling in 1,000 backyards, a day without work, and someone's mother spreading mayonnaise on a slice of white bread, cigarette smoke to the mustard-colored end on the filter outside of the plastic plant, the last inhale and puff. Check it. Once I saw it written in asphalt, men leaning on shovels, a Sanskrit difficult to spell, their vocal cords of cedar, courage, word by word, sawdust and sice, and I do not understand, but I can tell it is a blessing, not cruelty or grief, though it rises up from the marrow, a dark noise, a dwelling, a place to well, a hook, a punch and feint, for what sister countering sorrow, straight to the gut of the body hidden. And the voice shakes the air like a bell, or whether to believe is to pray. In my drawer is the holy card of Our Lady. Lock prison doors, release the names. Lock prison doors, release the names on the rounds as you rolled and duck and throw a hook, and then the unending rain of our nights by the open stove as our children slept on the floor with not enough money for the heat. And how you sang them to billow with your voice of black roses, blue light and trains, our daughter with her hair like roots. What I mean to say is we have survived, unexpectedly sighed, crowbarred and jabbed. If our arms are a house, how lucky we are. We take turns being the roof. This is a poem for Joe Weil. It's called A J for Joe. I don't think I've ever read this for you. Have I? No.
Not live.
Right.
Keep it up on it.
J is the first letter of my dead grandfather's name. I could pin a J to my office door, but what of it? Why only a single letter memorial? Instead, I could stick a J from the far corner, let it rise like a blue jay from a branch as I cried Joseph, which is the name for another father. The priests let the incense hover like the smoke from a J, the one my boy Paul lit at a party in Lowell the night we got arrested and ended up in a Lawrence cell. And Manny bent over crying for everything we never told. J as in Jam Master, jamming on the cassette in my 72 Chevelle through the black last night. J is the first letter of Jehovah of Johnstown, PA, where the floodwaters rose high as Noah, where my friend A jogs at night to jettison the juju her last lover carved into her spine. J as in Jersey, the small bodega where Joe and I woofed red fish and rice after teaching 10th graders. We sat out in the Spanish night smoking menthols as 15-year-old girls pushed strollers, chatting in El Salvadoran accents, the street of saffron and sofrito, soccer balls and sequined letter chains, not saying anything except with our eyes as the city turned blue and the streetlights turned yellow, and some girl hollered out a window, "Hey, Jay, 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 Jay." How her voice hung in the air, as if it was tattooed, as if it was burned inside us. What we keep. Gray-blue rain, far from your fingers, tap-tapping the letters of your name. And the blue hills above the graveyard we found at the edge of the woods, the fireflies we chased through the trees, drinking rum. Were we singing or laughing when we fell soaked into the shadows of the grass? The chair in the corner of the bar in Budapest, Pittsburgh, Binghamton, in the rusting cities and the rusting places where we leaned against the wall and the smoky haze of bar smoke and breath, and the rooms at the top of the twisting stairs where we slept and fucked in the lullaby of the radiator's hiss. What we keep is small change in a child's palm. What we keep is our tongues clucked in our cheeks. I sip glasses of harsh gold, mash my teeth, my hand reaching for that dress you wore, like a factory girl on a Friday after she's quit on the last day of summer. What keeps us from worms is this tough, rough-handed kiss. To swing against slag the purple hills of mid-autumn, outside the city of bridges and blue sun, the distant tintinnabulations of church bells, blur of twilight, candles lit by widows and the windows of old farmhouses, falling into the full grapevines along the lake, the fields our hands furrowed, and the cluttered cupboards where we keep what comes. Someone turns out the kitchen light, walks through the rooms we once rented, walks away from the unraveling rain, the dime-thin dust on the windowsills where with fingers we traced our names. Two more. I want to close with a couple love poems. The first one was written for two voices, for my partner Lisa, and it goes back and forth in these two voices. And I want to read this because today in the workshop we did a metaphor exercise, and basically this came out of creating metaphors and statements and then sort of editing it down. And it's called Duet. And it's the last poem in my book. Sasha sings a line, then I'll end with one other poem. Why are you frowning? Unfold out your palms. You've trained me. You are quietly resting all morning on the window of what I did wrong. Come look outside, I say. Come hear what you've never heard. You are all the way home, I looked your way, and you didn't become the music. You are not the eye, you say. You are the orchard and the pool hall and the ink. You are somehow the one written who went before I could not spell. What are you saying? And the dealers outside shouting, and the rain scribbling curses against the screen. You are not the constellation of shotgun holes in the wall. You are, and one of us will continue. You were the first time in a hotel room, Times Square long after midnight, the banished places the pimps were sent, the joint we shared by the basketball court, and the shard of glass you held up to the moon by the East River. You are unbuttoning my body. You are coffee and oranges in autumn, hushed recess, the sound of eating candy. You are alone the only voice that can keep me orphaned. You are a saint's medallion in a small girl's hands. You are the one wrong joy transfigured. You are when there, if there is nothing, you tell me we can repeat ourselves. You are barefoot running by the blue barn. You are somehow crayon singing. You are the only letters of the alphabet uninvented. You are the last language I will ever learn. Okay, I want to end with my partner. She's been struggling with a disease for a number of years. It's related to lupus. It's a kind of autoimmune disease, and what it does is it creates these wounds on her limbs. So she has trouble walking, and all her teeth fell out, and it's really a very nasty, tough thing that we deal with. And so I wrote this poem for her. This is about, I think a lot of my work is about, we struggle so much in this world, which is very difficult, but yet we keep going, we continue, we go forward despite all this. And so, I think that's what poems do for me, and I'm sure do for you too. They give us a moment against the despair, even when they're the saddest, because sorrow alone is the worst and most terrible thing, but sorrow shared is something closer to communion that takes us to places human and holy. This is called our limping. You are not here. The apartment smells of red beans and rice. On the blue flame, I've become shawls of steam. When we lay, we wrap ourselves in shawls. Long before you fell sick, I am longing before you became sick. Thin-boned and fragile, the foot of your weeping wound, your swollen hands, as somewhere someone bandages their child's bald head, or adjusts the IV cord, or like my friend LaSalle, who crawled into bed at the hospice to hold the last breath of his last love. We come to this to bear, some before the others. This is truth. So come with me. Come walk with me. Past the trio singing on the sidewalk, outside the subway, their Latin psalms no pills can fully keep from calling like whole notes the pregnant women, baptizing the street with their slow gait. Come, walk with me, my limping love, through sunlight, apple blossoms, and wind streams, past the old Victorian drug house and the Korean kid in a LeBron shirt nodding to headphones, past the ER room entrance and the Kentucky Fried Chicken with their long line of rusted cars for Friday takeout, that summer shine, this laughter from a passing car, as my limping love leans into my hands. As what we found is never wasted, and what you are looking for will not happen. There is nothing to get better, and hope is the worst disease. But in the sound of a moment when the light falls slanted through the knotted oaks, we will find one another, the way a musician's fingers find the keys to his accordion, and breathe. Blue rivers, pierogi, babushkas, that knotted scarf I know she will never wear when she is old. She will not be old. Take my hand, past fire hydrants, and a boy with a handful of crystals, past starlings swooping like desire. Let us stroll. I touch her midnight cheekbones. I touch her yellow pussed bandages. Please do not turn away. What is dying but blood and piss? What is dying but a smell to make you vomit and feel guilt-racked with? I touch her blue, swollen hands, wrapped in wool. I touch the waiting rooms and the hospital beds. I touch the long waiting and the white waiting rooms and the weeping of strangers for their dead. I touch her chest, full of riddles and coughing. The mothered, still, expectant world. She, collarbone thin, the small birds her scarred hands once were. I stroke the thumb you hold. We go on, limping. Thank you.
Well, let's give him another round of applause. Sean completely reduced me to tears, I have to say. Wonderful, wonderful reading. And I think we're going to hear another wonderful reading from Joe Weil. And Joe Weil is the award-winning author of 5 full-length books of poetry, 4 chapbooks, and a CD of songs with Vic Ruggiero, leader of the ska band The Slackers. Weil has read on National Public Radio as well as PBS. In 2008, a profile on Weil's life was done for New Jersey PBS. His poems, short stories, and essays have appeared in the New York Times, the Boston Review, North American Review, the Saranac Review, Rattle, Maggie, Paterson Literary Review, Lips, and New York Quarterly, among others. He's currently an assistant professor at Binghamton University. His most recent book of poems is The Great Grandmother Light, Poems New and Selected, from New York Quarterly, and a collaborative book, West of Home, from Blast Press, with his wife, the poet Emily Vogel. The responsorial section of West of Home was performed in May 2014 at the KGB Bar as a play by actors from NYU. Weil lives in Binghamton with his wife and 2 small children, Claire and Gabriel. And I'll say of Joe's poems that they kind of turn you inside out and make you really aware of what it is to be human, what it is to be alive, what it is to be rooted, what it is to live in a place and a time. Let's welcome Joe Weil.
I see they did a carpet. They did a jerry-rigging job. That's what I gotta be my first poem. How many here know what a jerry-rig is? The jerry-rig is to make something work in the wrong way, but it works. I come from a world where everybody makes something work in the wrong way. So this first poem, and I think Maria and Sean come from worlds in which you got to improvise all the time. So this one's for my father. It's to a jerry-rigger. My father made everything work out all right, albeit in a left-handed sort of way. Cars, marriages, doorknobs. We had a dining room table with a bad leg he propped up and leveled off with the 1965 Encyclopedia Britannica. We had a TV from the antenna of which he rigged 10-pound test. 12 was too heavy, 8 was too light, and tied it to the infant of Prague, who was at just the right height to ensure Channel 4's immaculate reception. Actually, we had 2 TVs, one with no picture and one with no sound. My father watched the Jets game, making small, minute adjustments, sticking his hand up the baby Jesus dress, adapting to the weather, the interference of the electrical cake mixer next door. He had shoes he patched with cardboard, an abscessed tooth he treated with a tea bag. One suit he sewed until it sprouted weeds, until the knees grew too threadbare for even his expansive sense of use. He worked the swing shift, came home at odd hours, missing parts of his once impressive fingers. He scraped, he improvised, he made things stretch until he broke. And who was there to fix him? What gentle jerry-rigging God could have patched my father up? What line could have held him from his dying when I whispered, "Live"? And all the world kept breaking, and the sun shone with such an immaculate contempt. So I'll be funny and then it turns deadly, so don't trust my funniness. Because to me, that's what life does. I worked in a factory, and I was the first aid attendant, so you know the place was kind of crazy, because forget it. I'm not good at wrapping bandages, but they never had the INS come in until after they came up with NAFTA. Then they figured they no longer needed to look the other way when they had illegal workers. So all of a sudden they grew ethical, and they would have people come in, and they would snatch friends of mine and deport them or try to deport them. That's what this poem is about. It's called Obstructing Justice. In the factory, the INS would come wearing their brand name, INS, and catch the illegals who were in the act of almost making a living. Fat Jose fell from the forklift basket some 20 feet and broke his legs, lay writhing on the oil-soaked floor. And I thought how they had broken the legs of the thieves but left Christ's bones intact because he was already dead. And I thought how I would like to kill everyone in a suit, and all the Christian Republicans and the elitist leftists in the academy who prattle on about globalization, and make me ashamed of ever having read a book. And the bored students I saw sipping their espressos in Hoboken cafes who had no idea and wouldn't have cared how deadly their boredom is. But there were not enough bullets for my rage, and so I killed no one, but knelt beside Fat Jose, who was out of his mind with the pain, drooling, the bone in his left leg jutting out from his work pants, his wallet containing a picture of his daughter in a communion dress, 3 singles and a false ID. This pudgy father, this criminal. And being the first aid attendant and the shop steward and the idiot in residence, I refused to let them cuff him, and told the INS to go fuck themselves. Stared at the bright letters on their chests, these clowns of the law, these clowns, and nothing ever felt more right when they threatened to arrest me for obstructing justice. It was better than the sweetest sex. And I was still saying, "Oh, fuck you," when the foreman dragged me away. To me, it's important, and my poetry comes out of my life experience, which Maria teaches her students, which is great, and Sean too. So I'm going to read this one prose poem when I was between jobs before Maria saved my life. All right, I worked as a mover, which was easy when I was 19, but when you're 40-something and out of shape, and they make you the box man, which is the really hard job, you're not lifting the heavy furniture, you're going 200 times up the stairs with boxes. Then you know, and I met the ooh people. Well, you'll learn about them here. When I was unemployed due to economic layoff from my factory, I worked for a while as a furniture mover. Under the table, $12 an hour and whatever tips you might get. I was over 40 by then, and I was the box man, a job for younger men with the legs of center fielders. The box man carries all the boxes up and down the flight of stairs. It might seem the easier job compared to moving the heavy furniture, but you go up and down those stairs about 150 times with sometimes 40-pound boxes, and your legs start to feel like they might stage a walkout on you and let you drop to your death. One job, we started at 6 in the morning and finished at midnight. It was in a rich neighborhood and had an ooh couple. Ooh couples watch you. They stand behind you saying, ooh, 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 be careful. All the way up the stairs. They can cause accidents just by being underfoot every inch of the way. They think you are a Morlock. They usually have children or pets, and if you smile at the children or the pets, they hug them tightly to their chests and grow wide-eyed as if you were about to molest them. They believe all working people are trailer trash and thieves, and that we love nothing better than to break their precious things whenever we aren't having unprotected sex with our sisters. If you break anything, and they back terribly, your boss will be sued and you'll get fired. If you want to know who is what in America, work on a moving van. So this house had a basement the size of a football field. It really did. It took 16 hours, at the end of which they made no attempt to tip us. Me and my friend were so tired and sore, we went to eat in the only joint left open, this little Mexican place, and fell asleep at the table. The waitress had to wake us up. I worked as a box man for 2 months until I just couldn't stand it. Hell, it was better being homeless. Because I'd been that. The work was hard, but the people were harder. They all stepped out of reruns of 30-something. And I remember one couple had a beautiful baby grand. Neither could play it. I couldn't help myself. At lunch break, I approached them and said, They had seemed nice enough until then. I said, "That's a gorgeous Bechstein you've got there. Could I just play it a little?" They looked at each other like aliens conferring and said in unison, "No." I continued, "Can I hear you play? I love piano." The man said, "We don't play piano. A few of our friends do." I could tell this bit of familiarity had gone too far. So I shut up, finished my lunch, and returned to moving boxes. But the piano still haunts me. I keep thinking that no piano should lay dormant like that, a mere display of wealth. I think of all the unplayed pianos on this earth, some used as glorified tables for mail, coats, family photos, others kept polished, but without a single hand touching their keys. I keep dreaming of sneaking back into that house in the middle of the night and playing the Bechstein. I see the young, attractive couple coming down the stairs, and they are properly chastened. "You play very well," they say. "Come, live with us and teach us the ways of your tribe." It is hard to move pianos in America. Pianos will seldom be played. Harder even still to be pursued by ooh couples as you struggle up the stairs. If you have any spirit left, it makes you angry. What can you do with such anger? You can wait until it turns into sadness. A sadness so deep you can dive into it and never reach the bottom. Even though, according to all the ooh couples out there, you've been at the bottom all your life. And, Sean and Maria both plot for more than just themselves. Sean edited a magazine years ago called Red Brick Review. And they published a poem of mine. Sean published my poem, Painting the Christmas Trees. So I want, I'll do that next, and as soon as I find it here, it should be here. It should be in the book, Painting the Christmas Trees, 104. And then I want to do a poem Maria published, because without people like Sean and Maria, I wouldn't exist. I'd be telling stories in a factory, if there was a factory to still go to. All right? So here. In my odyssey of dead-end jobs, cursed by whatever gods do not console, I end up at a place that makes fake Christmas trees. Thousands, some pink, some blue, one that revolves ever so slowly to the strains of Silent Night. Sometimes out of sheer despair, I rev up its RPMs and send it spinning wildly through space, Dorothy Hamill disguised as a balsam fir. I run a machine that spits paint onto wire bows, each length of bows a different shade, color-coded, so that America will know which end fits where. This is spray paint of which I speak. No ventilation, no safety masks, lots of poor folks speaking various broken tongues, a guy from Poland with a ruptured disc lifting 50-pound boxes of defective parts, a Haitian so damaged by police interrogation he flinches when you raise your arm too suddenly near, and all of us hating this job, knowing it's meaningless, yet singing, cursing, telling jokes, unentitled to anything but joy. The lurid, unreasonable joy that sometimes overwhelms you, even in a hole like this. It's a joy rulers mistake for proof of the human spirit. But I tell you, it's Kali, the great destroyer, her voice singing amidst butchery and hate. It is Rachel, the inconsolable, weeping for her children. It goes both over and under the human spirit. It is my father crying in his sleep because he works 12-hour shifts 6 days a week and can't make rent. It is 110 degrees in the land of fake Christmas trees. It is Blanca Ramirez keeling over pregnant sans green card. It is a nation that has spiritualized shopping, not knowing how many lost to the greater good of retail. It is Marta the Packer rubbing her crippled hands with Lord's water and hot chilies. It is bad pay and worse diet, and the minds of our children turned on the wheel of sorrow. No language to leach this from the blood. No words to draw it out. A fake Christmas tree spinning wildly in the brain. And who can stop it? Who? Unless grief grows a hand and writes this poem. And I want to do a poem that Maria published that I was, the thing is that these guys took chances on poems that maybe a lot of people wouldn't. I don't do anything fancy. Whatever poetry's there is there by accident, you might say. All right? But no. What I mean by that, I don't care. It's time to praise you guys. So that's what I'm here to do. All right? Because there's too little of it in this world right now. The first time I got up early, I did this one, and it's a poem of mine that was later the only probably award I ever won that I can think of. But here it goes. The first time I got up early and put my work boots on and knew that they meant work, I was 19, freshly dropped out of college, and I came downstairs to join my father in the kitchen. He'd lost his larynx the year before, had to learn to belch out words without a voice box. He stood there in his white stone products uniform, and I stood there in my work boots, and he just cried. His stoma, that hole they leave you with when they cut a larynx out, filled up with mucus. He had to dab it with a tissue. He said nothing, but pulled 2 soft bills from his wallet and handed them to me. Later, when I came home, machine grease in my pores, stinking of coolant mist and sweat, he offered me a beer. Here, kid, he belched. My father, 55 years old, reduced from grade A machinist to janitor, the guy who cleaned the toilets, cancered and canceled. He said, work's work. Only the bosses get to call it a career. We sat for an hour on the porch, letting the tiredness drink us, the warm night touch us with its fur. He said, I'm sorry. I said, what are you sorry for? He didn't answer, just opened another beer. I wanted to kiss him, but I didn't. There were these blanks between us as beautiful and hopeless as the sky. There were these blanks, and what could we have filled them with? Later, when he was too drunk to walk, I helped him up the stairs, took his work shoes off, cleaned the snot from his throat hole, covered him with a blanket. This was love. I meant it, silent and knowing it could kill me. I took my time. And I'll end with a poem. I'll end with a poem for my daughter. I'll do a poem for my mother, but my daughter and my mother, they're both named Claire. It wasn't my idea, it was my wife's. She said I told so many good stories about my mother that she felt like she knew her, even though my mother died in 1977, and so she named my daughter Claire. But I'll end with this. Why should a chipmunk bring you back? Or the solemn throb of lightning without the thunder sound? Or treading on thin ice, that old familiar crack I loved as a child and risked my life to hear? Come with me now, if only as some pain. My stealthy soul keeps longing to decode, to see your son bald, unsettled, vain, a man who trips on pants cuffs, laces love. And shake your finger at me, or hide your face for shame, but come, rise from the pantry's onion skins, and only speak the fullness of my name. Then who would care for losses or for wins? There's not a loss or win enough to raise you from the dead. Forgive my greed. I should be satisfied to stumble on and find you at odd hours in a stone or a weed, snow-covered, random, in some sudden thing that for no reason brings my grieving back, as sharp as when you died, that brings you here, where I am as old as you were when you left. Starlight, star bright, whatever may suffice. Look, Ma, I'm dancing, and the world is ice. Thank you.
I have to say that that was such an incredible reading, wasn't it? It was just so wonderful. These two together are a force of nature, for sure. Both of them made me cry. When you hear really good poetry, doesn't it make you incredibly happy? Even if you're crying, you're just incredibly happy to be privileged to hear this kind of poetry. Let's give them another round of applause.